Okay, we appear to be go. All systems go, go, go. Hi. Good to see you all. I'm Tad. Oh, God, I'm all pink. Um, Never shaved before doing anything. Anyway, well, we'll assume that will die down after a while. Hello, good evening. Welcome to see you. Actually, no, it's getting worse. Good to see you. I will be here for about the next hour reading. We will be doing pretty much that. I don't really have any other plans. As I mentioned, I've been just working and working on the book, conducting dogs, more in the train sense than in the orchestral sense, although a little of both. And just generally trying to stay caught up with all the exciting things going on in the worlds of insurance, banking, and technology. All three things that are constant thorns in the side of the Beale Williams enterprise. Deb has to handle some of them. I have to handle some of them. They're none of them fun, but we do okay because we have no other choice. There are times, yes, I got my t-shirt from the graduation thing in the mail. Apparently that was included in the price of the ticket. So thank you, Patrice, who sent it to me. What was I saying? God, I can't even remember. Just talking about, the normal stuff of life. But basically, we're doing okay. Dogs are doing okay. Kids are doing okay. Not a whole lot to talk about that way. Any odd or interesting things happened this week? No, it's really been, I actually had to get into the car. It's not mine anymore since we gave away all of our other cars to our kids. So it's now both Deb's and mine. But anyway, I had to get in the car today and actually just drive for a while because I've been home for like 5 straight days, except for a very brief sojourn to the vet's office with Johnny to get a shot. And I realized that I literally have been looking at the same things for 5 days straight, whether it be my screen here in the office or the TV upstairs or the living room watching the dogs or occasionally out in the back watching birds and bugs, which is something Deb and I like to do. And in fact, that's one of the reasons that Deb in particular has put in a lot of work in the garden to plant native plants, mostly to attract those self-same bugs and birds. Because of course, so many, because of human spread and climate change and things like that, there are so many bugs and birds now that are displaced from their normal habitats and their normal ecological niche, or at least that they're having trouble surviving and thriving in those niches because of various changes. So we tried, we've got a lot of property here, so most of it's wild, but the part around our house is all covered in plants that Deb has mostly brought in and planted, and almost all of them are natives, again, because we want to promote that. But as a result, one of the nice things to do is go out and sit in the yard as the evening comes on in one of the various spots and listen to birds, which I never in a million years ever thought I would be doing. That it never particularly appealed to me. I mean, I always understood that there are people who love bird watching and things like that, and I never grasped it. I didn't have anything against it. I never would have made fun of it or anything. I have a personal habit of saying, like, anything that anybody does that brings them joy and doesn't harm anybody else is good. And if it actually improves the life and the world around them, then that's wonderful. And certainly being more aware of the animals that live in and around our neighborhoods and our places of residence in general is a good thing, and that is helpful. And it gives us a much better handle on how the insect population, especially things like butterflies and moths, is changing over time where we live and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, we have a tendency to go out and sit in the backyard or up on the deck thing or whatever and just listen. We have a bird a bird listening app from the Cornell laboratory, and that will tell us what birds they are, because although I'm starting to get interested, and Deborah's been interested for a while, neither of us are expert enough to identify more than a very small number. I mean, the obvious ones, like mourning doves, jays, crows, the ones you hear all the time around here, like towhees and chickadees and stuff like that. But beyond that, and we get some interesting rare ones occasionally, and that's always like a source of excitement. It's like, oh, we got a golden crowned kinglet, it's a wren tit. We've got a wren tit, stuff like that. But anyway, so, that's like all I'd been looking at is, my desk, the TV, the living room, and occasionally, off into the distance in the backyard watching birds and things like that. And the dragonflies, which are interesting to watch too, because we decided many long months ago, many years ago now, that we had no interest in having a swimming pool. So we essentially just stopped cleaning it and just turned it into a makeshift pond. And someday, one of these days when we can afford it, when we're not in the process of helping our kids buy cars and all the kind of things that we're doing at this stage in our life, but one day, not too long from now, we hope to properly convert it into a pond instead of it being what it is now, which is just an overgrown swimming pool. But the frogs love it, and the dragonflies love it, and it's full of mosquito fish, and they appear to be thriving in there as well. So there aren't many mosquitoes, which is also good when you have a big standing body of water. So yeah, that's basically all I've been doing, and then working as much as possible, and will continue to do so probably all the rest of this month, because I'm determined to get Splintered Sun finished and in some kind of situation to send it off to my publishers and have Betsy read it and Deborah read it and a few other close readers, just to get some feedback on whether it's any good or not. Because frankly, I never know. I always do the best I can, and I think all my books are okay, but I'm certainly not the one to judge, since I don't have to pay money for them. So it's nice to get other viewpoints. Let me think. Anything else to talk about? No, just the continuous battle of being a resident or a homeowner in the 21st century. Just there's always things to do, and they're all complicated now. But not really a lot beyond that. I can't really think of anything. We had some family over last weekend. But other than that, just been working. So, sorry, wish I had something more interesting to tell you, but for me, working is very interesting and exciting, especially when I feel like I'm behind, which is almost always. So there you go. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is check in and see if anybody has dropped in to leave some comments. And then I will be reading. So that's how it's going to be. Not a whole lot of other stuff to do. I see comments from Rosalba and Chris Fobb and Isaac. Hello, Isaac. And Petra and Christina have checked in, presumably from Berlin, but not sure. Dirk is here. Suzanne. Nikki Chetwynd. Hello, Nicole. Good to see you. Mark I tried to say two names at the same time. Mark Redman, and Mark Craigbaum. And Mark, of course, as I'm always mentioning, is somebody that I've known forever. And in fact, Mark and I used to be entertaining people online back in the very earliest days of social media. Whether those people remained entertained is, a question for the ages. But they certainly seemed entertained at the time. So, Chris Fobb has chipped in to mention recommending the Cornell Bird app. Yes, it is. It is an excellent app. It is free. I mean, you can join and get extra stuff and things like that, but it's basically a free app that you can use to identify any birds around in your area, because it localizes to where you are, and then it has a master list of what might be possible. And when it hears birds, mostly the identifications are quite solid. Every now and then there's you get a little half circle that's telling you, we're not 100% positive about this. It might be this, but we're not sure. But they'll give you the one they think it is. Anyway, What else? And yeah, and the cats are roaming around in the background, as somebody may have noticed, because that's what cats do. In fact, I just had to swoop up a bunch of black cat hair that has begun to collect on the daybed. One of our two cats that live down here with me, they're both lovely cats, but one of them in particular, TJ, has very long black hair. So, I vacuum every day or two, and invariably, though, before 24 hours passes, there are little tumbleweeds of black cat hair swooping across the floor. I don't know if you can see any of them from the angle you're at right now, but it's not that it's that exciting. It's little tufts of black hair, but between the opening and closing of doors and stuff, they gradually turn into little cat hair tumbleweeds. They join up, but they still move across the room. It's a little bit eerie, actually. They're kind of like, I don't know, something out of a ghost story. Like someday they're going to all build up together into one ghost cat. Anyway, but that's about it. I have very little to waffle on about tonight. So instead of continuing to waffle on, I will see if I can find my book, because we're getting to the sort of climactic last quarter or so of the book. So anyway, just to remind you, Bobby got caught. Bobby got caught when he went to a fellowship meeting with Rip Rash and Gob. And during the course of that, a bunch of the sort of police of hell, the murderers sect, burst in and started grabbing people. And Rip Rash escaped, and then Bobby went back to get Gob, the little boy, and threw him down to Rip Rash. But then Bobby was basically beaten unconscious, woke up in Eligor's custody, I guess, for lack of a better word, and has been tortured unremittingly ever since. And the book goes into great detail about that, although less than I could have, I suppose. Much more meant to be evocative rather than specific. But that's basically what's going on, except for the fact that Bobby essentially, after all of this horror, essentially said to Eligor, look, you can torture me till you kill me. I'm never going to tell you where the feather is, but if you'll let me go and let Kaz go, I'll give you the feather. I don't care about it. I'll give it to you. And at that point, Eligor shoved him back into a kind of a zero state, into a gray nothingness. And he hasn't heard anything from him since, so he doesn't know what's going on. So that's where we are. Chapter 34, Thing. I don't know how long I hung, lay, floated there in the gray nothing. Forgive the confusion of verbs, but I honestly couldn't tell you what I was doing. I was in my hell body, the snake staff body, striped like one of the antelopes of the African veldt, naked and helpless. I wasn't wearing restraints, but that didn't make any difference because I couldn't move anything but my head and neck. Obviously, that was better than being actively tortured, but only for the first 1,000 or so hours, after which I began to go a little crazy. Speaking of, obviously, that was better than being actively tortured, but only for the first 1,000 or so hours, after which I began to go a little crazy. I know, you're saying, hey, he's already said he was tortured for hundreds of years or something, and now this. You're right. Time does pass in hell, even if it passes differently than in the real world. And the subjective time I'd experienced would have made at least a bunch of years, Earth time. But the key word here is subjective. As long as I was Eligor's prisoner, I was out of normal time altogether. He could make it feel like whatever he wanted. It was entirely possible, perhaps even likely, that this was still the same morning of the day I entered his hospitable clutches. Still, for the first time since I heard the Grand Duke's voice and knew he'd caught me, I felt something a bit like hope. Not much, but he'd offered me a deal. It might be just another trick, but the mere fact that he'd taken a break from Flaying my skin and boiling my nerves like vermicelli suggests he wasn't sure what to do with me. Paradoxically, my threat to let him torture me to death was keeping me alive, at least for the moment. I wasn't bluffing either. I had realized somewhere in the worst of it that my situation was truly hopeless. Eligor was just too strong. I couldn't escape him. I couldn't fight. The only thing I could do, I realized, in that cauldron of pain was suffer. But I could keep on doing it if I had to. Yes, I would beg for mercy. Yes, I would tell him anything, say anything. But as long as I kept refusing to actually do what he wanted me to do, he could only subject me to more torture. By the way, here's a parenthetical from the author. That was another thing that was in that last section, which was that while being tortured, Bobby had said exactly where he had left the feather, which was in his clothing, on his body, underneath a bed, upstairs in the house where G-Man and Posey were sort of squatting, her grandfather's house. But Eligor said that his men went and turned the place upside down, and it wasn't there. Not Bobby's body, not the feather, none of it. So that's a bit of a mystery. Anyway, so continuing. Yes, I would beg for mercy. Yes, I would tell him anything, say anything. But as long as I kept refusing to actually do what he wanted me to do, he could only subject me to more torture. He could torment and kill Kaz in front of me. But he could do that to her, whether I helped him or not. The only way I could do anything for her was by refusing to do what he wanted and forcing him to bargain. So I hung, or floated, or lay there suspended in nothingness forever, or even longer, trying to build up my strength for when the hurting would start again. And I knew it would start, because I would have to prove to Eligor that I wasn't bluffing. I would have to make him give up on pain. It started again. I won't bother to describe it. After a few millennia, even Eligor seemed to get bored and left me to the eager attention of something named Dr. Teddy, which looked like a plush bear toy, but had the stunted fingers of a human child and the eyes and whiskey breath of a terminal alcoholic. Dr. Teddy made Nylock's torturer look like a weekend amateur. Not only did he give me everything all over again, Dr. Teddy also had a few cute ideas of his own. But even my furry new friend seemed to run out of ideas after a while, and at last I was sent back to the gray place again, weeping and trying to remember my name, even though I knew that if I remembered that, I would also remember why I was here and what was happening to me. They'd done something strange to me, so I couldn't sleep, and although I could tell time was passing by the slow easing of my suffering, there was nothing else to make the hours and days pass in that dreadful, empty, uncolored place. When things finally changed, I was at first aware only that something was in the gray with me, and that whatever it was wasn't quite in or out. The best way I can explain it is like being underwater. Somewhere there's more shadow than light, and distance distorts things and plays tricks. For long moments, what I was looking at was only a slantingly vertical shape, wildly distorted as though coming at me from a dimension I couldn't entirely see. And then it stood over me. Gray corpse face and pinhole eyes, that weird underslung jaw hanging open like a fish's as it stared at me. The rest of it was gray too. Gray, dead skin, stretched over bone. Smiler hadn't gotten any prettier since our last encounter. I didn't even care much anymore, to be honest. Let me start that one again. I didn't even care much anymore, to be honest, but I still flinched a little at the sight. "What do you want, handsome?" I said when I found my voice. "Getting impatient? I'm sure you'll get to play with me when your master's done." Smiler leaned in so close I could see the lines on his skin clearly for the first time ever in the flat medical light of the gray, and I realized that they were not just random wrinkles, or even a tattoo, but something much more intricate, much more strange. The murderer was covered in writing, trails of tiny letters laboriously cut into the skin with something very sharp, thousands of characters in some illegible text that covered every exposed inch of his skin. I looked down to the grayish hand pointing the four-bladed knife at my face and saw that the skin on his gnarled fingers was decorated too. His other hand was hidden behind his back, but I would have bet it was the same, covered in little scars as numerous as crawling ants. "Why did you do? What was reason?" Smiler still ran his words together in the same slow but breathless way, monotonous as a bored priest reciting a too familiar catechism. "Why you not run?" "I don't know what you mean." "Look, if you're going to stab me or something, just do it. It'll give me something new to think about." "No." He leaned even closer until the leathery flesh of his face was almost touching mine, and I could see his eyes moving wetly in the deep holes. His voice was strained, even desperate. Tell it why." "Tell what?" I could smell the faint odor of his decay even in this gray nowhere, the musty, nauseating sweetness of something that had spent a long time dead and undiscovered. "Tell it why you go back. Why you help little thing. Why no run? Save you." It took me a while. In my defense, may I remind the jury about the thousands of hours of sadistic torment I'd undergone? Anyway, at last the astonishing truth dawned. This horrible creature wanted to know why I'd gone back to save Gob. He had watched the whole thing, it seemed, not just Rip Rash's meeting, but what happened afterward. "Why did I go back?" "Because it was my fault the kid was there in the first place." It had suddenly occurred to me that maybe Stabby McMurder-Mummy was now searching for Gob too, so I tried to make the kid seem less important. "I forced him to come with me in the first place. He didn't want to leave Abaddon. I was just trying to help him." "No!" It was the first time I had ever heard anything like anger out of Smiler. Ordinarily, he was as weirdly cheerful as one of those old grandpas who don't speak any English that you see sitting in the back of Chinese grocery stores watching the news in Mandarin. "No," he said a little more calmly. "You no help. Angel help. You devil. Keeps tell me. Devil in angel clothes." Keefs. It sounded weirdly familiar. Again, it took me longer than it should have. Wait a minute. Keefus? Sam's mysterious benefactor, the angel who had made the deal with Eligor and used the golden feather as a marker. "You know Keefus?" "Keefs. Keefas. So beautiful. Beautiful like clouds and silver." And suddenly the thing smiled, a full display of those ugly little bottom teeth as well as the few nubs in its upper gums. "Keefas, tell it. Do my words, and it will be an angel too." What will be an angel? What is it? Smiler pointed the knife at his own chest. It will be an angel if it do everything right. Keefa says it will." Oh, my sweet God, I realized. He thinks he'll get to be an angel by killing me. "I am an angel," I said slowly and carefully. "I'm Deloriel, advocate angel of the third house. Are you saying that Keefus told you I was some kind of devil? It wasn't Eligor who sent you after me?" Smiler tipped his head to one side like a puzzled dog. For the first time, I realized that he was as naked as I was, but whatever external features he'd once had, like genitalia, were gone, just more ruined dead flesh. "Eligor?" "The big old demon who owns this place? The one whose prisoner I am? You weren't working for him, but for an angel?" "It loves angels." The corpse puppet head bobbed up and down. "It will be angel when it's done." I don't like these everything you know is wrong moments when they happen to me in the course of an absolutely ordinary life. But I like them even less when I'm a prisoner in hell taking a little break between bouts of indescribable punishment. What was going on here? This monstrous thing, this gibbering killer, didn't belong to Eligor and maybe never had? Now that I thought about it, the Grand Duke's reaction when I mentioned Smiler's name had been a bit strange, a bit non-committal. But why would Kephas employ such a creature? Wasn't Kephas hiding his or her identity from the rest of heaven precisely because Kephas thought the highest was too rough on the souls of the dead? How did that jibe with sending a serial murderer after a perfectly blameless angel? Who was the real villain here? Eligor, Grand Duke of Hell, or Kephas, supposed heavenly idealist? Neither of them? Both of them? "How did you meet Kephas?" I asked. Smiler stared hard at me, perhaps sensing some of the unhappiness behind my words. "Kephas came. Kephas spoke, showed it heaven, showed it the light, told it Papa Man and Mama were wrong. It wasn't bad. It was made for something else." Papa Man? Mama? Smiler had been alive once, so of course he must have had a family, or at least a mother, but it had been a long time since I had thought of him as anything other than a force of supernatural evil. "Were those your parents?" "It was their cross to bear. Mama always said it was born because Papa Man had the sin of pride, because he tried to make a baby at her when she was blessed by God to stay a virgin." "A virgin?" "Yes, virgin. But Papa Man put the dirty in her. He made it inside her, and when it came out, she saw it was ugly bad. That was what she said, what Mama said." Smiler was getting worked up again, his voice getting monotonous and rushed, as though the words were carried along on a river of feelings too fast and deep to be reached or even looked at closely. Dirty thing, and Papa Man left it behind like dirt on the floor, like mud on her dress. Can't beat the dirty out of it, that's what Mama said. Can't make it die because God has reason for it. God wants it in the world no matter how ugly bad. No matter how ugly bad and mean and wrong. I almost wished I'd never asked. It had been unpleasant enough just knowing it was out there and wanted to find me, this vile thing, this monster that had killed so many innocent people. Knowing how it had become such a monster was worse. Much worse. It told me its story in bits and pieces, in strands that at first seemed to have no connection, but later proved to be bits of a larger web. In some ways, the tale was depressingly familiar, the dreadful story of so many sociopaths and religious psychopaths, a child treated like an animal, or worse, the name of God used as the excuse for torture, an existence with no safe place, no kindness, no love. It was almost like Smiler's vicious, dreadful parents had done their best to make something even more terrible than themselves, and they succeeded. But every time he had killed, at least during his mortal life, Smiler had thought he was sending something beautiful to heaven, a gift for the angels. Even the name he had given himself, the name he had left at the scene of so many brutal crimes, was not meant to evoke Chaucer's Smiler with a knife, but because when she had finished beating him or puncturing him with sharp things or burning his fingers or toes or face with a hot iron, Mama would always tell him, "Stop crying. You'd better smile. Remember, God loves you." And that was how he thought of himself, how he still thought of himself, no matter how deep the blood and madness. He was God's smiling little soldier. The story trailed off at last in confusion because Smiler himself still didn't know what to make of me. His tunnel vision idea of the world, the same crazy focus that had set him to murder and driven him to follow me all the way to hell, was not able to easily absorb new information. And the new idea that I wasn't some kind of demon pretending to be an angel had left him baffled and uncertain of what to do next. It has to think. It has to pray. God will tell it what to do. Smiler revealed the hand that he had kept hidden since he entered the gray space. It looked no different from the other until first his fingertips began to glow, then the fingers themselves, then his palm too, until I could see his bones through the skin as though they were made of blazing phosphorus. His hand was so bright it was hard to look directly at it. "What?" I blinked. If I could have raised my hands in front of my eyes, I would have, but I was still helpless below the neck. "What are you doing?" "Hand of glory. Kephas gave it the hand to do God's work." Smiler swiped the glow at the gray nothing that surrounded us. The nothingness tore, leaving a ragged, smoldering edge and more nothingness beyond. Then Smiler climbed through the hole. "Wait!" I cried. "Don't go! Don't leave me!" But it was no use. He was gone. The gleaming wound healed over in an instant and vanished. The gray was empty once more, and I was alone. Chapter 35, Hounds. When the gray finally dissolved, I found myself back in the conference room. There weren't any donuts this time, just the moldy ruin of the box in the middle of the table where it might have sat for years. The coffee pot lay on its side, shrouded in cobwebs and covered with a thick film of dust. The table and carpet were filthy with dust too. It was a bluff, I felt sure. Well, fairly sure. Eligor had changed his outfit. Instead of his Count Richelieu drag, he'd opted for something a bit more like a male Victoria's Secret model, if you can imagine such a thing. Blue jeans, bare chest and bare feet, and beautiful spreading white wings. "I was an angel once, remember?" he said when he saw my expression. He was still wearing the Vald face. "And a bit higher up the ladder than you are." "Yeah, but I heard you got downsized." For a moment I saw a little of the white-hot anger beneath his achingly handsome golden-haired disguise, a ripple through his entire being as though a stone had dropped into a pond. "I fell." "He's not hurting you at the moment, Bobby," I reminded myself, "so why don't you shut the fuck up and stop making him angry?" I stayed silent while he stared at me. He stared for a long time, as though I'd grown several new and interesting features since our last meeting. At last he extended his hand, and an instant later Dr. Teddy was standing beside him, no taller than Eligor's waist and cute as a wind-up abortion doll. "I have a proposition for you, Delorio," said the Grand Duke. I'm listening. Elgor sat down in midair. Here's the problem, troublesome angel. You make me uneasy. Not because you're as smart as you think you are, but rather the reverse. You are so stupid that I don't trust you at all. He frowned as he considered. A lot of Renaissance painters, and not just the gay ones, would have burst into tears at the sight of such beauty. You might think you've successfully hidden the feather from me and everyone else, but I can't trust your idea of successful. Knowing that you're all that stands between me and an infernalis curia makes me, well, if I was a delicate little thing like you, I'd say nervous. He wasn't hurting me, but he wore a very strange expression, so I swallowed my natural tendency to crack wise at the dumbest possible time. So I'm going to offer you a bargain. I'm going to let you go back to Earth and get the feather. If you turn it over to me, you stay free. I have no reason to go after you once I've got it back anyway. I couldn't believe it. Could this really be happening, or was it just a trick? Elgor was actually bargaining? I did my best to stay calm. No. I take the Countess with me. If we both get back safe, I'll give you the feather. He laughed. It was nearly a pleasant sound, which just goes to show you how powerful he really was. You're joking, of course. I could just erase you, both right here and right now, then take a chance that wherever you've hidden the feather, it'll stay there. Then why don't you? Again, the long, considering look. It was only when he was doing such small human things that I could really see how inhuman he was, because there wasn't the faintest glimmer of emotion on that perfect face. It was like trying to stare down a marble Michelangelo. All right, Angel, my last offer. I will let you go. You will return to Earth and retrieve the feather. Then you will trade it to me for the Countess, if that is really what you want most from me. A sly smile. I would have chosen a better harvest of the riches of hell if I were you, but we won't belabor it. In return for the feather, I will give you the whore and promise you both immunity. Don't call her that. The smile widened. Believe me, compared to what I could accurately call her, that is a compliment that would make a maiden blush with pleasure. But never mind. That is my offer. My only offer. Give me your answer now. I was desperately trying to see the trick. I knew there had to be one. How do I know you'll keep your promise? Little angel, the entirety of what you call reality only exists because of the promises of things like me. I cannot break my word any more than you could dismantle the sun or turn time backward. Also, you have no choice. And if I get the feather and give it to you, you'll let the Countess of Cold Hands go free? Casimira, you'll release her and bring her to me and we'll swap, right? Then you'll leave us alone? No revenge? Exactly. Say it. I want to hear you say it. He shook his head, his golden head. My, you are demanding for someone in your situation. Very well. I, Elgor the Horseman, Master of Flesh Horse and Grand Duke of Hell, promise that if you return the angelic feather you've hidden to me, I will exchange this she-devil you call Casimira, Countess of Cold Hands, for it. He gestured lazily, and suddenly Kaz stood beside him, bound in chains and still gagged. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and she shook her head violently. I knew she was trying to tell me Elgor couldn't be trusted. Like I didn't know that. But no matter how cool I was playing it, I also knew I had no other choice. All right, I'll make your deal. And then you'll leave us both alone, wherever we are, forever? Eligor nodded. Once I have the feather, I will leave you two alone forever, wherever you are, as long as you keep silent about what you know. But if you try to sell me out later in any way, our bargain ends, and I'll do things to you that will make your time in the conference room seem like the games at a children's party. Agreed? I took a breath, looked at Kaz, who was still struggling. What choice did I have? Okay, I agree. Now, take those chains off her, will you? If you hurt her, you'll never get what you want from me. Never. I'll just call heaven and hand it over. A moment later, Kaz was gone. She is free. But, of course, she is still in my care. She'll stay that way until I hear that you have the feather and you're ready to give it to me. I felt like Sky Masterson, putting my entire bankroll and my immortal soul on a single roll of the dice. But like I said, what other choice did I have? Am I free to go then? I asked. Eligor nodded slowly. No, almost. But if I were you, I wouldn't hurry off until you've heard what else I have to say. You see, somehow my old friend Prince Citri discovered that you were my guest. You remember Citri, of course. I remembered the monstrous creature very well. Oh, yeah, he's a charmer. He's a jealous, interfering fat turd, said Eligor with just a trace of rancor. He's informed the Senate that the prisoner I borrowed from Murderer's Sect's custody is in fact an angel, a heavenly spy. What? Because of that, a bit of controversy has erupted. And because I have supposedly corrupted the guards of the Murderer's Sect, Citri and the others have sent the Mastamas purified to my house. They answer only to the adversaries, so bribery is not going to work this time. Sent? You mean they're on their way? The Grand Duke looked bored. I would guess they're probably already outside being stalled by my household staff, but that won't work for long. So you had no choice. No wonder you made a deal with me. If you didn't, they were going to take me anyway. Eligor shook his head. No, I would never turn you over to the Senate alive. But if I give them your remains, there's still the chance that someone will find that feather. I don't want it hanging over my head, if you see what I mean. He fluttered his pure white wings. Thus our little bargain. But how am I supposed to get out of hell? Not my concern. You found your way in. You can find your way back out, little angel. But you said that if they catch me, they'll make me tell them where the feather is. Tell them what you did, everything. Ah, he nodded. Yes, there is one more arrangement to be made. He pointed, and the teddy bear monster was suddenly dressed in hospital scrubs. Did you bring along our little friend, Dr. Teddy? Of course, master, said the toy bear in his gruff little voice. He produced a sphere about the size of a golf ball from the pocket of his smock and held it out in a furry paw. The thing was partially transparent, like a cloudy bubble, and I could see something sliding wetly inside it, something with very little room to move. Eligor took it from him and held it out for me to see. It had too many teeth and too many scrabbling legs, and its eyes watched me through the filmy sphere, as if it were already thinking about drilling into me and laying eggs or something. Do you recognize it, Deloriel? You've seen more than a few. I leaned away from the hideous thing. What are you talking about? It's an intracubus. our version of one of your guardian angels. These are assigned to every human born to keep track of all the things they do that will eventually bring them to us here. On Earth, intracubi are insubstantial, but here they're quite real, quite physical. In fact, to implant this one, Dr. Teddy's going to have to do a little surgery on you. Surgery? Elagor smiled and gestured. The hotel conference room disappeared, instantly replaced by the chamber with the rusted stained table and cutting tools. A moment later, without anyone touching me, I found myself face down on the table and unable to move. I felt little torture me Elmo climb up onto my back, then move forward until he straddled my neck. Worst of all, I could feel that he had a little furry erection. It has to go in at the base of the skull, the Grand Duke said. That way, if you talk to anyone in hell, I'll know about it. And if the Mastema catches you, well, our little Entracubus will just eat his way out, and we won't have to worry about your saying something you shouldn't. He chuckled. But if you do somehow make your way out of hell and back to Earth, Mr. Dollar, the Entracubus will disappear with the demon body you're wearing now. And I'll be waiting to hear from you. You know my office number. Call me when you have the feather, and we'll arrange our little swap. Then Elagor was gone. I could feel his absence like a flame suddenly extinguished. It was just me, the thing in the sphere, and the furry monstrosity who promptly began to gouge a hole in the back of my head with what felt like a rusty screwdriver. Anesthetic? In hell? I had really hoped I was done screaming for the day. You would have thought that after all the terrible things that had happened to me lately, after all the attacks, torments, violations I'd suffered, this would have been just the latest and the least, a small price to pay for escaping alive, or at least being given the chance to escape. You'd have thought that, but you'd have been wrong. The hideous sensation of having my skull gouged open paled into absolute insignificance next to the thing that Dr. Teddy pushed into me until it nestled against the meat of my brain. It felt like a hermit crab made of razor blades forced into far, far too small a shell that just happened to be attached to my neck. Then those legs and teeth closed on my nerve stem, anchoring the thing. And worse by far than the pain was the feeling of its connecting itself to me in 1,000 horribly intimate ways. I've talked with spirits and demons and guardian angels, and I've met things that would make a Green Beret wet himself and never even notice, but I swear I've never felt anything as disgusting as having that thing get comfortable inside my head. When the toy doctor was finished with the skull rape, he took a few brisk moments to close me back up, sewing the wound with what felt like baling wire. Then Dr. Teddy in the conference room suddenly swirled and evaporated, as though a drain had opened up and let it all flow away. I found myself standing outside on the grounds of Flesh Horse, hidden in an ocean of shadow. The great tower loomed so that it blocked even the light from the highest beacons. Still, enough light filtered down to the great house's main entrance to let me see the host assembled at Elagor's gate. Any one of the huge, fierce, mounted purifier soldiers could probably have crushed me by himself, and there were dozens of them, armed to the teeth with strange guns, long spears, and axes with oversized, jagged blades. Their horses were carcasses, skin tattered to reveal yellow bones and drying organs. But what really made me uneasy were the tracking beasts that slavered and pulled impatiently at their harnesses. They were smaller than the horses, although not by much, but so strong and so eager to be after their prey, me, remember, that several times they yanked bulky handlers off their feet and had to be dragged back by many hands pulling together as though they were drifting four-legged zeppelins. In the middle of one such struggle, one of the animals lifted its malformed head and howled, a noise that turned my bones to water. The others chimed in until the grounds beneath Flesh Horse rang with their chilling cries. I'd heard of hellhounds, but this was the first time I'd ever seen them in their native element. And suddenly I felt more sorry for Robert Johnson than I ever had. As I stood there, my heart beating so hard I could barely stand, I heard the old bluesman's mournful, doomed voice singing for me and me alone. And the days keep on worrying me. There's a hellhound on my trail. As if sensing the hopelessness of my thoughts, the intracubus tugged at the strings of my mind like an impatient driver racing the accelerator, making everything that was in me turn cold. I reached up and touched the back of my head where the unspeakably nasty thing had been inserted. Dr. Teddy's stitches felt big as shoelaces, crudely knotted, and the incision was still oozing. A little bit of Eligor was going with me, whether I liked it or not. Bad as it all was, I didn't really have any options left. It was time for me to run for my life and my eternal soul. Chapter 36, The Deeps. We won't get very far into this one before we hit the top of the hour. But let us continue. Chapter 36, The Deeps. Hell's dark hours were coming on, which helped a little. I was naked and bruised, bleeding in a few places, but most of the horrible things that Eligor had done to me hadn't left marks. Nakedness was less common in Pandemonium than in other parts of the Inferno, but it certainly wasn't unheard of. As I scuttled through the shadowed places, across cinders and broken stone, I prayed that Riprash hadn't already sailed back to Cocytus Landing. For all I knew, I could have been Eligor's prisoner for months or even years, and although I doubted that, some time had definitely passed. The hand that Block had bitten off was now mostly regrown. The gray skin was too smooth and puckered like burn scars, but the fingers all worked, and I could touch them with the thumb, which meant I could hold things in it. Weapons was what I was thinking about, of course. Angel bodies are ambidextrous, and apparently so are demon bodies. I hadn't suffered too badly by being one-handed, but when it comes to fighting, two hands are definitely better than one. Even as I made my way down through the outskirts of Sulphur Lagoon, not too far from where I had been entertained so interestingly by Vera, I heard the alarm being raised around the city, the shriek of sirens and the howl of my animal pursuers, the last, thankfully, still distant. That was little old me everyone was being warned about. Luckily, most of Pandemonium's citizens would be locking themselves behind doors, since nobody would want to come into contact with the hellhounds, which weren't always real selective about what they caught and ate. I didn't do anything is not an excuse that went very far with either the hounds or their masters. A massive sign hung above the Via Dolorosa at the entrance to the city, where most municipalities had things like, "Welcome to Sheboygan." Pandemonium's said, "Nobody's innocent," in 10-foot flaming red letters. I was in such a hurry to get to Riprash that I was careless entering the Stygian docks and was stopped by a guard. I had to beat the creature senseless, and when I dragged him into the light, I saw that he was just a ragged old thing, bat-like and frail. I didn't know if he'd raised some kind of silent alarm, though, so I couldn't waste a lot of time feeling sorry for him. I shoved him into a dark corner behind a huge coil of rope. I still didn't know what to think about average folks in hell. Some of them had probably done such horrible things that if I knew the truth, I'd want to burn them to ashes on the spot. Others might have been driven to their crimes by circumstance, like Kaz, or might have done so many comparatively good things since their crimes, like Riprash, that it seemed petty to keep punishing them. On the other hand, this was hell. How much sympathy could I afford to waste on its common folk, especially when nearly all of them would be delighted to see me captured and tortured again? I made my way to Kraken Dock without running into any more port employees. To my immense joy, I could see the nagging bitch bobbing in its slip. I had a bit of a disagreement with the sailor guarding the gangplank, a scaly fellow with webbed fingers and toes, well designed for a mariner's life. But I kept my temper. Nobody got stabbed, and eventually Rip Rash himself appeared. When he saw it was me, the ogre hustled me aboard and into his cabin. Gob was sleeping in a corner, curled on a pile of hides like a pet. Rip Rash insisted on doctoring me on the spot, dousing my wounds in stinging brine and then covering them with hot tar, a cure that seemed worse than the injuries. Still, I was profoundly grateful just to be in a situation where someone would even think of trying to give me some comfort. Gob woke up during the doctoring and watched the process with interest. One or two of Rip Rash's crew wandered by as well to see who was, as one put it, "yopping like a pig with the wrong side of its neck cut." I warned Rip Rash that I was currently Hell's Most Wanted, so he ordered his men to pull up the gangplank and prepare to leave port. "Might get the harbor guard when we reach the outer breakwater," my favorite ogre told me. "Don't want to fight, but if we get one, you'll need something." He frowned at me. "Wouldn't hurt to put some clothes on you, too. Styx gets colder as we get out into the center of the channel." I was nearly dead on my feet, but I did my best to remain upright while Rip Rash dug through what he had. None of his own clothes would fit, of course. I might as well have tried to wear an old Sears family camping tent, but he found a few of his boss Gag Snatch's things in a sea chest. The shirts all had 2 neck holes, of course, to go with Gag Snatch's redundancy in the head department, but with a flick of his dirty fingernail, Rip Rash turned 2 holes into one large one. And the pants, though baggy, were a better fit than anything of Rip Rash's would have been. None of this helped with the ache in my skull from Dr. Teddy's brutal surgery, or the knowledge that some kind of crab monster was crouched at the end of my brain stem, ready to execute me, but I couldn't afford to be picky. I was out of Eligor's clutches, except for that, and it beat the shit out of being flame-broiled, I can tell you. "Now, weapons," Rip Rash rumbled. Stab, stab, or boom, boom. Maybe both." He lifted out another much heavier chest like it was a shoebox, and after rattling his way through a pile of his own weapons, he pulled out a knife that looked like a slim lady's dirk in his massive hands, but which would serve me well as a sword. I slid it through my belt, feeling like a Halloween pirate, but Rip Rash wasn't done yet. At the bottom of the chest, he found what he'd been looking for, a brace of pistols wrapped in waterproof canvas. Not the flintlocks I had seen several times in Hell, but something a bit more modern, closer to the cap and ball Colt revolvers that had solved the most crucial disagreements of the American West. They were made of rough black iron, and the grips and other trim were yellowed bone, minutely carved. "Fella traded these to me for passage, more or less." Rip Rash laughed. I had been helpless and tormented for a long time, so I liked the idea of being able to shoot at things that wanted to hurt me. I slipped the guns into my belt on either side, butts forward, then took turns drawing them cross-handed, individually and together, Billy the Kid style. My regenerating hand ached after only a few tries, but the guns were well balanced. I planned to fire them later on to see how accurately they were sighted. "You said more or less?" I asked as I practiced. "He stowed away in foul bitters. Wanted to get to pandemonium. I told him I'd take the pistols as payment. He said no and pulled one of them on me." Rip Rash shook his huge head, the wet wound in his skull looking as fresh as if it had just happened. "So I threw him overboard in the Hungry Rock Straits and kept his guns. But I can't even get a finger into the trigger guard, so you might as well use them." "I guess the original owner won't mind." "When we go through the straits, you can ask him," Rip Rash laughed. "But you'll have to shout. I hung an anchor on his belt, so he's probably still on the bottom." When Rip Rash left to see to his duties, I stretched out on the floor of the cabin. Gob watched me silently as I pillowed my head on a set of oilskins. I fell asleep almost immediately, a deep unconsciousness that would have been dreamless but for the nagging sensation that I was sharing my skull with something far more unpleasant than just my own brain, which, of course, I was. And that's where we're going to stop, because it is now 2 o'clock straight up, and that is also the end of that section. So it's a convenient stopping point. And besides, the action is about to start happening soon. So, with all of that said, it's now 1 minute after 2. So I will finish up quickly. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, it's a pleasure to spend time with you. I deeply enjoy, and I hope you do too, these evenings, mornings, evenings, depends on when you're listening, that we get to share. And I will be back at 7 p.m. to continue with the adventures of Bobby on the Styx. And that's the river I'm talking about, of course. STYX, like the band. Although the river came first, and I still don't know why they named their band after that, but oh well. Anyway, so take good care of yourselves. That's first. Take good care of your friends and loved ones, those close to you. Keep an eye out for others who might need a kind word or a helping hand. And peace to all of you. And be well, and I will see you soon one way or the other. So, whoops. Ciao, ragazzi.